Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continuing our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam at Canto 7, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. We're taking up at text number 11. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually aware of religious principles is not heinously envious of poor animals. Heinous. They put me genius. Tell you what I'm going to do for you, Vaisesika. How's it spelled? H-E-I-N. Heinous. Hatefully or shockingly evil. Abominable. Heinous. Origin, Middle English from Anglo-French. Heinous. From heine, hate. From hair to hate. Of Germanic origin, akin to Old High German has, which means hate. Heinous.
Look up deity. Rhymes with anus. Look up deity. The Sanskrit word for sin.
Huh?
N-A-S.
What?
It rhymes with the Sanskrit word for sin. It's not etymologically related. It's just pointing out that it's an interesting coincidence. I see.
I don't think it matters how you pronounce deity, because if you pronounce it deity, everyone's going to say, why is he pronouncing it wrong?
Deity.
Anyway, that solves it right there. And what's the other one you wanted? It's deity, not deity. That was something out of... What other word did you want? Okay. Heinous. Deity. Okay. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually... is that where we are? Who is actually aware of religious principle is not heinously envious of poor animals, should happily perform daily sacrifices, and those for certain occasions, with whatever food is available easily by the grace of the Lord. Purport: the word dharmavit, meaning one who knows the actual purpose of religion, is very significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 18:66, Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. Becoming Krishna conscious is the topmost stage in understanding of religious principles. One who reaches this stage performs the archana process in devotional service. Anyone, whether a grahastha or a sannyasi, can keep small deities of the Lord suitably packed up, or if possibly installed, and thus worship the deities of Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan, Lord Jagannath, or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by offering food prepared in ghee, and then offering the sanctified prasad to the forefathers, demigods, and other living entities as a matter of routine daily work. All the centers of our Krishna conscious movement have deity worship programs very nicely going on, in which food is offered to the deity and distributed to the first-class Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and even to the people in general. This
I'm just going to make a point. I got to make a point because he's been mocking me and, him digging in, drilling down, and there's only so much a guy can take,
Just trying to help. Process. Confirmed. This performance of sacrifice... This performance of sacrifice brings complete satisfaction. The members of the Krishna consciousness movement engage daily in such transcendental activities. Thus, in our Krishna consciousness movement, there is no question of killing animals. 12. No question of all of killing animals.
Actually, if you ask Jayadvaita Maharaj, Prabhupada insisted that the books be in American English.
Okay. There are 5 branches. Okay. That's good point. There are 5 branches of irreligion, appropriately known as irreligion, vidharma, religious principles for which one is unfit, paradharma, pretentious religion, abhasa, analogical religion, upadharma, and cheating religion, chaladharma. One who is aware of real religious life must abandon these 5 as irreligious. Purport: any religious principles opposed to the principle of surrendering to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna are to be considered religious principles of irregularity or cheating, and one who is actually interested in religion must give them up. One should simply follow the instructions of Krishna and surrender unto him. To do this, of course, one needs very good intelligence, which may be awakened after many, many births through good association with devotees and the practice of Krishna consciousness. Everything but the principle of religion recommended by Krishna, sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja, should be given up as irreligion. 13. Religious principles that obstruct one from following his own religion are called vidharma. Religious by others dharma. Religion created by and who opposes the principles of the Vedas is called upadharma. And in jugglery of create a new become fashionable called follow any type of religious system are ultimately in Srimad Bhagavatam fashionable idea because the system is described by the Supreme Sarvadharma Jaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. The real religion is that of surrender to the feet of the Lord. Next canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, connection with the Jana Yamara Sakshat Pranitam. That no one can manufacture at home, manufacture actual religion. Elsewhere it is said, Pumsam parodharmo. The real religious system is that system of progressive Krishna. Paradharma, upadharma, misinterpretation of Bhagavad Gita is chaladharma. When Krishna directly says something and some rascal interprets or shabda words, various types of
12th canto, it says that one who is expert in words becomes known as a
pretentious system manufactured to willfully neglect the prescribed duties of his life is called abhasa, a dim reflection, false similarity, verisimilitude. If one becomes prescribed duties for his particular or varna, why are they not sufficient to mitigate all material distresses? The principles of varna and ashrama as given in the Shastra. In the Vishnu 3.8.9 it said, Varna shrama charata purushena paradan Vishnu ate panta toshakara. One should focus for Krishna consciousness. Vishnu worship, you should manufacture some concoction fashionable for any rebel or fool to be elected. And there are many missionaries who have with the real clearly said that one who worships the demigods has lost his integrity. We find a person who has lost all integrity has a temple eating sannyasis there. This type of religious system, its poor forms, is strictly forbidden. Such pretentious religions should be stopped. The original should actually become a brahmana. He should not only take birth in a brahmana family, but must also be qualified. Also, even if one is not born in a brahmana family, but has brahminical qualifications, he must be considered a brahmana. By strictly following the system, one can be happy without extra endeavor. Subhava vihito dharma nishta prashanta. The real aim of life is to mitigate distress, and you can do this very easily by following the rules of Shastra. By following the principles. That verifies Sankirtan, this book. How's that? Krishna consciousness, how to get free from stress. Oh. Just to maintain his body. Although lying in one place, one who is maintains his one who obtains his livelihood without it is simply developing, not even try to earn a livelihood to maintain body and soul together. This is illustrated here by the example of the great python, which lies in one place, never going here or and there to earn a livelihood to maintain itself, and yet is maintained by the grace of the Lord. As advised by Narada Muni in Bhagavatam 1.5.18, Tasyaiva heto prayateta ko vido. One should simply endeavor to increase his Krishna consciousness. One should not desire to do anything else, even to earn his livelihood. There are many, many examples of this attitude. Madhavendra Puri, for instance, would never go to anyone to ask for food. Shukadeva Goswami has also said, Kasmad bhajanti kavayodhana durmadandan. Why should one approach a person who is blind with wealth? Rather, one should depend on Krishna, and he will give everything. All the members of our sannyas should spread the process of is very much appreciated. One poor, you try consciousness.
Yeah.
The time I ever heard it was from Srimad Bhagavatam.
I'm not. Because something like important to me. I want to say the word audiobook. It's like play right. I put chef. It is an English thing, but wait, let 6 years of this trying. Man, I've been out of America so long, I don't know what it sounds like anymore. North, south, east, or west? 16. Satisfied. His activities with the same personality of Godhead, residing in everyone's heart, enjoys transcendental endeavoring by lusting in all directions where they desire to accumulate wealth. For a person who has suitable shoes on his feet, there is danger, thorns. For him, by their happiness. Okay. Satisfied even with only drinking. Should tongue and a household dog. Purport. A person of Krishna consciousness will not enter service to make soul together. A true Brahman is satisfied. He has nothing to eat. He can drink a little water. Practice. Fortunately, in how to be satisfied. He is always satisfied because he feels the presence of the Supersoul within his heart and thinks of him 24 hours a day. That is real satisfaction. A devotee is never driven by the dictations of the tongue and genitals, and thus he is never victimized by the laws of material nature. 19. Because of greed for the sake of the senses, the spiritual strength, education, austerity, and reputation of a devotee or brahmana who is not self-satisfied dwindle, and his knowledge gradually vanishes. Text 20. That's really an important verse. Asantushtasya viprasya tejo vidya tapo yashaha sravanan tindriya lolyena jnanam chaiva kirti. This is a nice verse. Because of greed for the sake of the senses, the spiritual strength, education, austerity, and reputation of a devotee or brahmana who is not self-satisfied dwindle, and his knowledge gradually vanishes. Very important verse. 20. The strong bodily desires and needs of a person disturbed by hunger and thirst are certainly satisfied when he eats. Similarly, if one becomes very angry, that anger is satisfied by chastisement and its reaction. But as for greed, even if a greedy person has conquered all the directions of the world or has enjoyed everything in the world, still he will not be satisfied. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that lust, anger, and greed are the causes of the conditioned soul's bondage in this material world. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajo, guna, samudbhavaha. When strong lusty desires for sense gratification are unfulfilled, one becomes angry. This anger can be satisfied when one chastises his enemy. But when there is an increase in lobha or greed, which is the greatest enemy caused by rajoguna, the motive passion, how can one advance? in Krishna consciousness. If you're very greedy to enhance his Krishna consciousness, this is a great boon. Lolyam ekalam moolam. This is the best path available.
O King Yudhishthira, many persons with varied experience, many legal advisors, many learned scholars, and many persons eligible to become presidents of learned assemblies fall down into hellish life because of not being satisfied with their positions. Purport. For spiritual advancement, one should be materially satisfied, for if one is not materially satisfied, his greed for material development will result in the frustration of his spiritual advancement. There are two things that nullify all good qualities. One is poverty, daridra dosha gunarashi nashi. If one is poverty-stricken, all his good qualities become null and void. Similarly, if one becomes too greedy, his good qualities stricken life. For a devotee is therefore advice for spiritual advancement. That this movement. India, especially, struck many temples. For temple construction is not bad, provided consciousness. Greed is to satisfy. Hands with determination. Getting wealth. When saying the truth, one should give up. Desires sense gratification. One way is walking on the street, see so many women. Have sex, he cannot conquer. He is determined first. If one is determined not to be envious of anyone, give up to accumulate wealth, it's difficult to protect the money in one. Anxious about without serving a great prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And simply by stopping. Purport: if one an illusion and cry for the one may over mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha. As the soul transmigrates, one who has taken birth must give up the present body, and then he must certainly accept another body. This should be no cause for lamentation. Therefore, Lord Krishna says, Dhiras tatra namuhyati. One who is dhira, or sober, who is learned in philosophy and established in knowledge, cannot be unhappy over the transmigration of the soul. 24. By good behavior and freedom from envy, one should counteract sufferings due to other living entities. By meditation and trance, one should counteract sufferings due to providence. And by practicing Hatha Yoga, pranayama, and so forth, one should counteract sufferings due to the body and mind. Similarly, by developing the mode of goodness, especially in regard to eating, one should conquer sleep. Purport: by practice, one should avoid eating in such a way that other living entities will be disturbed and suffer. Since I suffer when pinched or killed by others, I should not attempt to pinch or kill any other living entity. People do not know that because of killing innocent animals, they themselves will have to suffer severe reactions from material nature. Any country where people indulge in unnecessary killing of animals will have to suffer from wars and pestilence imposed by material nature. Comparing one's own suffering to the suffering of others, therefore, one should be kind to all living entities. One cannot avoid the sufferings inflicted by providence, and therefore, when suffering comes, one should fully absorb oneself in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. One can avoid sufferings from the body and mind by practicing mystic Hatha Yoga. 25. One must conquer the modes of passion and ignorance by developing the mode of goodness. And then one must become detached from the mode of goodness by promoting oneself to the platform of Shuddha Sattva. All this can be automatically done if one engages in the service of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. In this way, one can conquer the influence of the modes of nature. Everyone okay?
More than okay.
Yeah?
More than okay.
We're chipper today. Purport: just by treating the root cause of an ailment, one can conquer all bodily pains and sufferings. Similarly, if one is devoted and faithful to the spiritual master, he can conquer the influences sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun very easily. If one is devoted and faithful to the spiritual master. Yogis and jnanis practice in many ways to conquer the senses, but the bhakta immediately attains the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the mercy of the spiritual master. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado. If the spiritual master is favorably inclined, one naturally receives the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, one immediately becomes transcendental, conquering all the influences of sattvagun, rajagun, and tamagun within this material world. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Sagunan samatitaitan brahmabhuhyaya kalpate. If one is a pure devotee acting under the directions of the Guru, one easily gets the mercy of the Supreme Lord and thus becomes immediately situated on the transcendental platform. This is explained in the next verse.
Text 26. The spiritual master should be considered to be directly the Supreme Lord because he gives transcendental knowledge for enlightenment. Consequently, for one who maintains the material conception that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being, everything is frustrated. His enlightenment and his Vedic studies and knowledge are like the bathing of an elephant. Purport: it is recommended that one honor the spiritual master as being on an equal status with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sakshat Darittvena Samasta Shastrayi. This is enjoined in every scripture. Acharya mam pijaniyat. One should consider the Acharya to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In spite of all these instructions, if one considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being, one is doomed. His study of the Vedas and his austerities and penances for enlightenment are all useless, like the bathing of an elephant. An elephant bathes in a lake quite thoroughly, but as soon as it comes out on the shore, it takes some dust from the ground and strews it over its body. Thus there is no meaning to the elephant's bath. One may argue by saying that since the spiritual master's relatives and the men of his neighborhood consider him an ordinary human being, what is the fault on the part of the disciple who considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being? This will be answered in the next verse
but the injunction is that the spiritual master should never be considered an ordinary man. One should strictly adhere to the instructions of the spiritual master, for if he is pleased, certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagati katopi. Text 27. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the master of all the other living entities and of the material nature. His lotus feet are sought and worshipped by great saintly persons like Vyasa. Nonetheless, there are fools who consider Lord Krishna an ordinary human being. Purport. The example of Lord Krishna as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead is appropriate in regard to understanding the spiritual master. The spiritual master is called Sevaka Bhagavan, the servitor personality of Godhead, and Krishna is called Sevya Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is to be worshipped. The spiritual master is the worshipper God, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the worshipable God. This is the difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another point, Bhagavad Gita, which constitutes the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is presented by the spiritual master as it is, without deviation. Therefore, the absolute truth is present in the spiritual master. As clearly stated in text 26, Jnana Deepa Prade. The Supreme Personality of Godhead gives real knowledge to the entire world, and the spiritual master, as the representative of the Supreme Godhead, carries the message throughout the world. Therefore, on the absolute platform, there is no difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If someone considers the Supreme Personality, Krishna or Lord Ramachandra, to be an ordinary human being, this does not mean that the Lord becomes an ordinary human being. Similarly, if the family members of the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, consider the spiritual master an ordinary human being, this does not mean that he becomes an ordinary human being. The spiritual master is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore one who is very serious about spiritual advancement must regard the spiritual master in this way. Even a slight deviation from this understanding can create disaster in the disciples' Vedic studies and austerities. Text 28. Ritualistic ceremonies, regulative principles, austerities, and the practice of yoga are all meant to control the senses and mind. But even after one is able to control the senses and mind, if he does not come to the point of meditation upon the Supreme Lord, all such activities are simply labor and frustration. Purport. One may argue that one may achieve the ultimate goal of life, realization of the Supersoul, by practicing the yoga system and ritualistic performances according to the Vedic principles, even without staunch devotion to the spiritual master. The actual fact, however, is that by practicing yoga, one must come to the platform of meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the scriptures, Dhyana vastitatat katena manasa pashanti yam yoginaha. A person in meditation achieves the perfection of yoga practice when he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By various practices, one may come to the point of controlling the senses, but simply controlling the senses does not bring one to a substantial conclusion. However, by staunch faith in the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one not only controls the senses, but also realizes the Supreme Lord. Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tathagaro Tasyaite Katitayartham Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of the Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. It is further stated, Tushyayam Sarvabhutatma Gurushu Shaya, and Tadanjagyo Bhavarnavam. Simply by rendering service to the spiritual master, one crosses the ocean of nations and returns home, back to Godhead. Thus he gradually sees the Supreme Lord face to face and enjoys life in association with the Lord. The ultimate goal of yoga is to come in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless this point is achieved, one's so-called yoga practice is simply labor without any benefit. Text 29. As professional activities or business profits cannot help one in spiritual advancement, but are a source of material entanglement, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies cannot help anyone who is not a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. If one becomes very rich through his professional activities, through trade or through agriculture, this does not mean that he is spiritually advanced. To be spiritually advanced is different from being materially rich. Although the purpose of life is to become spiritually rich, unfortunate men, misguided as they are always engaged in trying to become materially rich. I'll read that again to make sure I read it properly. Although the purpose of life is to become spiritually rich, unfortunate men, misguided as they are always engaged in trying to become materially rich. Such material engagements, however, do not help one in the actual fulfillment of the human mission. On the contrary, material engagements lead one to be attracted to many unnecessary necessities. It's classic. Which are accompanied by the risk that one may be born in a degraded condition. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:18, Urdvam gachanti satvasta madhyatishtanti rajasaha janagya gunavritista ado gachanti tamasaha. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Especially in this Kali Yuga, material advancement means degradation and attraction to so many unwanted necessities that create a low mentality. Therefore, Jaganya Gunavritista, since people are contaminated by the lower qualities, they will lead their next lives either as animals or in other degraded forms of life. Making a show of religion without Krishna consciousness may make one popular in the estimation of unintelligent men, but factually, such a materialistic display of spiritual advancement does not help one at all. It will not prevent one from missing the goal of life. Text 30. One who desires to conquer the mind must leave the company of his family and live in a solitary place, free from contaminated association. To maintain the body and soul together, he should beg as much as he needs for the bare necessities of life. Purport. This is the process for conquering the agitation of the mind. One is recommended to take leave of his family and live alone, maintaining body and soul together by begging alms and eating only as much as needed to keep himself alive. Without such a process, one cannot conquer lusty desires. Sannyas means accepting a life of begging, which makes one automatically very humble and meek and free from lusty desires. In this regard, the following verse appears in the Smriti literature. Dvanva hatasya gartasyam jnanabhangadikaranam lakshayit va grihishpashtam sanyasid avicharlayan. In this world of duality, family life is the cause that spoils one's spiritual life or meditation. Specifically understanding this fact, one should accept the order of sannyas without hesitation.
Thus ends tonight's reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll take it up again tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. Thank you very much for joining in this yagya. Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo Bo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Bo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo. Vanchakopdurvisha Kripasnabhevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Natakoti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai.